Hey everyone, welcome back to Marketing Ninja Unleashed. I'm Rena, founder of You and Your Story and your host. I love this podcast because it gives me a chance to bring brilliant people to your world. Jay is one of those people. He's a storytelling consultant that helps founders find their stories and share them in a way that actually helps to win clients. He's also been forced to be a lot more self-aware, something that that a lot of us don't actually approach or need to think about for a very long time. But he's been forced to do that, and that's helped him help his clients as well. He also uses AI in a really interesting way, in a way that helps you to stand out and not just blend in with everybody else. This episode is absolutely packed with insight, so let's hear from Jay. Thank you very much for coming along today, and apologies for not making it completely clear that it was a video podcast. And I'm glad you're here anyway, and you didn't run away. So thank you very much for coming here, Jay.
Yeah, I don't think you'd forgive me if I did run away. So
No, probably not. But no, I really appreciate it. And one of the reasons that I wanted to get you on here is because actually you've got a really interesting story about how you ended up working in marketing. You were almost forced to. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
yeah, sure. Depending on how far you sort of want me to go back with this, but I mean, I've been marketing since sort of the last 8 years or so, and preceding that, I guess I was working in a mixture of things like doing sales, doing a bit of coaching on the side in terms of like personal development coaching, that is. And I guess there's a sort of a through line that runs through this. So I think this might appeal to you because obviously you talk about stories in business, I talk about stories in business. So hopefully this reflects nicely. But I mean, I had a chronic pain journey that started when I was 16. I literally woke up overnight and felt this sensation in the back of my head. And it was like a sort of a sense of a lump there. At the age of 16, you're kind of clueless about what to do about these kind of things as well. And basically this turned into like chronic sort of tension pains and kind of carried me through, I guess, my sort of teens and 20s. But it kind of took me down this path of like self-discovery. And I was always trying to sort of find out, okay, what's wrong with me? But after that, I started to ask bigger questions about myself as a person, as I sort of became more introspective and started to look at who I was as a person. So in my 20s, I was working in sales, and I was often in a situation like, say, for example, like on the sales floor of like sort of 60 to 80 people. It's all, the phones are humming. It's like an absolute buzz of noise all the time. But I was the one sat in the room who was sort of masking my personality all the time.
Okay.
Because I was often trying to sort of live to this idea of like what a salesperson is meant to be like, when inside my brain was screaming about the chronic pain or wanting to tell people that this is what's actually happening for me. So that's kind of, it was a sort of challenging experience. And again, throughout my sort of 20 years, I was still going deeper and deeper in terms of learning about who I am as a person. My values sort of tended to were taking me in one direction. And I guess working in like a corporate role was taking me in a different direction. So when I hit 30, the wife and I basically decided we'd go on a sabbatical. We went traveling around Southeast Asia, doing sort of Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore, and places like that for 3 months. Best decision I made in my 20s to do that. When we came back, we both decided actually we're going to do something that makes a difference with our careers. So I took a 20 grand pay cut to work for like a B corporation wellbeing company, and that's when I started to get into marketing. And it's interesting because working in sales before, I was that typical salesperson who was like, marketers, what the hell do? They do absolutely nothing. And you kind of have a bit of an ego as a salesperson sometimes. But yeah, it was interesting because when I actually sat down to start to write sales and marketing copy, I hit such a big wall. I was like, what is going on? Like, I thought I knew how to influence and how to sell, but actually I didn't know how to put those words together. And not knowing how to kind of put those jigsaw pieces together to form a puzzle was what took me down the rabbit hole with marketing. Okay. So I was working on the sales side initially, and then I'd recruit people to join our advertising platforms for this wellbeing company. And I was speaking to coaches, hypnotherapists, people across the sort of wellbeing spectrum, I guess, in terms of professionals. And they started to ask me, well, like, Jay, what do I actually say on a sales page that is going to promote me? And you've got that kind of one kill shot need to influence someone to click that inquire button and actually work with that person. And I was like, actually, that's a really good question. Like, how do you actually get people to influence people so quickly. And it wasn't sales, it was something different. So that's when I kind of went down the marketing rabbit hole, and from there, for the last 8 years or so, it's kind of like growing from sort of strength to strength in terms of like learning how to do different parts of the marketing game.
Yeah, that makes sense. You've talked about the similarities, and actually, there's one thread that you've talked about previously when we've had conversations
Yeah.
that ties through absolutely everything, and that's listening, empathy, and actually hearing what the person in front of you is saying. So, in your experience, how have you built that into it? How I guess how did you get to that realization?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of different moments, I guess, that stick out. Like, again, working on that sort of sales floor, I used to see people who you'd think of being as the archetypical salesperson. They had that gift of the gab. When you hear them on the phone next to you, you're kind of secretly jealous of like the way that they talk and the way their ability to like charm people. And I used to kind of aspire to that because I was in my early 20s, and you think, there's a lot to learn still in life, and you can learn from other people, there's nothing wrong in that at all. But what I learned as I became a better salesperson was actually there's sort of skills that underlie that are actually always present in your ability to like influence people, like rapport building, trust building, and again, like just listening and having empathy, because at the end of the day, the person is there to buy something from you because they have a problem that they're trying to solve. Very simple. And the same thing applies in marketing, right? At the end of the day, we're solving a problem for an audience. When I started to do coaching and dabbling in coaching, there were moments where I kind of truly learnt about the quality of listening. So, for example, one moment sticks out. One of my mentors called Robert Ellis. He coached CEOs in Silicon Valley, worked about 10 hours a week, earning about sort of £200,000 a year. And he was as good as it gets in terms of being like a personal coach. And I was sat in a coaching cohort, and we were just doing, sort of peer coaching with each other and so on as well. And one of the ladies in the room was like talking about an issue she had at work with like a work colleague. And I guess actually the rest of the room were full of guys, so maybe there's a bit of ego involved as well. But we were all trying to sort of fire questions at her. And Robert stopped us and he's like, guys, look, you're all like jumping to get into the answer as quick as possible, whereas you need to stop. And then he took over. And the way he listened to the lady speak, I was just absolutely blown away. So there's like something that we think we do quite well as people, but actually most of us are not really that great at listening. We're kind of just listening for validation that what we're saying is actually, just confirmation, really, confirmation of actually what we're thinking in the first place. And then when you hear someone truly listen, it actually like there's a wow factor to it. And on the other end of it, it's like when you're listened to in that way and someone is preserving and holding what you're saying in that kind of like almost like as if you're holding a newborn baby, there's something undefinable about that. It just it makes you feel so good as a person, and it really like kind of softens and disarms everything that you're kind of feeling in that moment. So when you kind of think about that in terms of like sort of sales and marketing, often we feel like we're trying to do the influencing. And then when you bring that quality of listening, it's, as I said, I think that word disarming is pretty good, because actually you don't have to have that sort of battle, or you don't have to feel like there's someone there and there's someone here. Actually, that listening is often that bridge that sort of connects you to that other person.
Yeah, definitely. And when you talked about that moment where you sort of realize that this person has actually heard me, I completely get it. It's a complete game changer, isn't it? Because people can talk at you for ages, and like you say, you're usually listening for something interesting or something that you're to make yourself feel better. But when you're actually listening because you're trying to hear what they're saying and you're taking that in, you can tell from the other side. And I've had it done to me several times before. I've always called myself an introvert, so my voice has generally been quite low, and trying to get my voice heard has been really, really hard. But the people that I actually make a connection with, the people that I'm still talking to years and years later, are the ones who actually took the time to listen to me. And I guess I didn't realize how much of a skill that actually was until I started my own business. And you see it from the other side, and you're listening to customers. You're actually listening to what their problems are, rather than just trying to get them sales or trying to do things quickly for them. When you actually understand the person, the business becomes so much easier, doesn't it?
Yeah, I have to agree with that, yeah.
Which ties me quite nicely onto a little bit of storytelling, because you use this to, I guess, one of the things that you're standing out for is actually helping people find their stories, because I know it myself. I've been running my business for a few years, and it took me a while to figure out what makes me different, which is really bad for a marketer. I'm fully aware of that. But when you're in it, you don't always see it. And actually having a conversation with someone makes a massive difference. And you're doing that for a lot of different types of people at the moment. So wellbeing coaches, people in health space services, businesses. How do you help them? How do you, I guess, how do you bring out their stories?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to agree with your point. Like, even if I'm working on my own marketing, there's massive friction involved. I wouldn't say massive, actually. There is friction involved in terms of getting inside my own head. So I think the point is that we all kind of struggle to do our own marketing because we are too far inside inside that lens to actually get out of it in the first place. So I think coming back to the point about stories, I think the overriding thing for me is about how kind of high level, or we're trying to like look at everything in one go. And I don't know about you, Rena, but I find that the best stories are just, honest to God, like moments. Like Matthew Dix, he runs a storytelling community, and he talks about these 5-second moments. And I that's kind of one of the main principles that I use, because you can have someone speak for 20 minutes at you about a story, but within it, there's just sort of micro observations that you're making about what they're doing. And often within that micro observation is packed the insight that you need, that unlocks how you connect to someone, whether that's your audience, whether that's your prospect, whether that's just someone who's interested in you as a person. And I think, yeah, we're so busy like trying to hold all that information in our heads. It's almost like we're kind of weighed down with that. You know, by the time we've kind of tried to collect and gather our thoughts, like we're so weighed down with that we can't see those moments as they come. So I think that's really important to like just let people speak, let them explain, and let them just tell their entire story. And then you as the outsider have the ability to extract those moments and like pull out those bits that are really, really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. That makes complete sense. And there's so many different ways of doing it at the moment. One of the things that I've heard is, and I'm sure you've heard as well from different customers, is just use AI, plug it into AI, they'll tell you your story. Doesn't always work, does it? And there's loads of people out there thinking, oh, AI is going to take jobs off marketers. What are your thoughts on that?
I think just a quick, I guess, quick analogy would be like, so I think it was last week or a week before, Meta announced that they're like laying off 8,000 workers, and most of them are going to be developers. And not only that, the punchline to the story is that Meta are now using AI to basically track every single keystroke, record every single screenshot, or like record the window in terms of what they're opening in the apps and so on as well. So effectively, these devs are keystroking their way out of their job, because at some point the AI will be like, okay, I can do exactly what you can do. And I guess that's the sort of scary part to all of this. That's that AI fear I think that everybody holds right now. It's like, it will literally take my job. And I can totally understand even why marketers are thinking that as well. But I guess even in that analogy, what you're kind of left with is the person. The dev is still a person. At the end of the day, they are not the summation of their technical skills. So what you're kind of left with is that person and their human essence as well. And I think that's where we don't really need to worry about the job loss bit just yet. AI is there to amplify what makes us human, and not just simply like a list of like what our experiences and skills and so on as well. It's how those all gel together, and how they kind of almost like, you know, you sort of putting them together and sort of clashing ideas together, and like when you kind of get that thing that comes out of the melting pot on the other side, that's when the good stuff comes out. So it's not simply something that AI can replicate right now. Maybe, you know, who's to say what it can do in the future, but at the same time, I don't think there's anything immediately there to worry about. It's a good amplifier, but it's not going to replace our humanness just yet. No. Yeah.
Tagging onto that amplifier sort of message, how would you use AI then to actually, to your advantage, to amplify your own message, I guess? Because there are ways to do it, and if you're not using AI, you probably don't know enough about it, in which case there's more fears, I guess. But if you are using it, what are the best ways to use it to get your own voice heard?
Yeah, I mean, I'll openly admit everything I do goes through an AI workflow now. That doesn't mean that it's all AI generated, but AI is definitely there to like shortcut the middle part, the grunt work in terms of like what we do as marketers. So I think a lot of it comes down to like the technical word would be like context engineering. But for me, it's just capturing all the human elements and making sure that everything AI produces filters through all of those bits. So whether that's the obvious things like your sort of tone of voice, whether it's like doing deep research on like the audience and their pains, problems, and what you and challenges and so on as well. But at the same time, like you do want to do things like sort of feed it samples of writing. One of the big things that I try and do is like feed it as many perspectives and opinions as possible as well.
Okay.
So there's a lot of different things I think that need to go into that context part. And then from that, almost like context pool, it can pull good things to produce your content. And then from there, then you can hit the ground running with the AI side of things.
One of the biggest things you talked about putting in different perspectives, and one that would help you, I guess, helps you get your voice out there in a more genuine way, right? One of the things that I see a lot of people doing, and I've touched on the subject, but actually it's not really just advice, is it? So when somebody says to you, just be authentic, I know that makes you laugh, but it is advice that people are just giving out there. And I get you do need to be authentic, but I also completely understand, like you, that it's quite dull advice. Like what do you do? How do you be yourself? How do you get yourself out there? What are your thoughts on the advice of just be authentic?
I don't think it's inherently bad advice, but if you're trying to be authentic, then I guess it still becomes performative, right? You're still trying to be something.
Yeah.
There's a saying from it's Nicholas Nassim Taleb, who he basically says like marketing beyond conveying information is insecurity.
Okay.
And I guess that's one of the sort of linchpins of like how I try to approach things, because I've been in the past, like we've all been there, where we get fed up of posting on LinkedIn. I've had people outright, more people than I can count, outright tell me like, I just hate social media. I just don't want to do it. And I think it was exaggerated. Like when I worked for the wellbeing company, it was exaggerated because I was working with like coaches and wellbeing professionals. And there are people who they know exactly what their values are. They know exactly their identity, and they would never be so performative that they would sell themselves out, I guess, the simple way of putting it as well. So the love-hate relationship was like even sort of stronger. And like, I think it's okay to admit that, you know, we kind of don't want to do that performative piece. So with the authentic bit, I think it's not inherently bad advice, but I really think that we just need to simply just like talk about like little things that happen in our business, or little things that represent who we are as people and our values, and that can apply to like a business as well. There's little things happening within companies that represent like what the company mission might be, or where they're going in the next 6 months, and things like that as well. And to sort of maybe attach it to that bit about like storytelling, like again, it's just there's little things that happen. Like for example, a couple of things that have just happened to me this week. Like for example, my laptop broke on Sunday, and the biggest thing I was worried about was like losing my hard drive, because all my kind of, you know, my brain is on there essentially. That's how I saw it, and I was like, I cannot lose that beyond anything. Last night my 2-year-old daughter was meant to be going to sleep. My daughter shuts me in the room. My wife goes upstairs, and she's like gone into her makeup bag, and she looks like basically the Joker from the Batman. There's no other way to describe it. But it's like all these little things that happen to us day to day. Like I don't think I'm a particularly interesting person. I'm okay saying that. But I know there's enough interesting things that happen in my life that you can attach to like your marketing, and attach to like the themes that you're meant to be talking about in your marketing as well. So yeah, I think that performative element like is still going to be there if you try and be authentic. I think it's kind of just stripping it down to like being comfortable, just showing up as who you are. Maybe it's that sort of that's where that piece of like honesty I sort of spoke about, like it's kind of like such a like important thing. And again, that could be seen as kind of like, you know, being cliche advice, like just be honest, just be authentic. But like, I think the honesty thing is probably more important than being authentic.
Yeah, definitely. It's almost showing a bit of vulnerability, isn't it? It's not trying to be that perfect person all the time, which I'm going to be completely honest, I have been trying to do, or I was trying to do before I started my own business.
Yeah.
After I started posting and stuff on social media, it almost doesn't matter. I think I tried to do a video once, and before I recorded the video, I spent ages trying to flatten my hair because I had all these little stray hairs poking up, and it was driving me mad. I got to the point where actually I almost didn't want to record the video funnily enough, the video was about being perfect and I recorded it anyway, but I pointed out the hairs that was sticking up and annoying me. And it was one of my most relatable pieces of content because people got it. They're like, oh yeah, it made sense. And I had so many comments coming in after that. They're like, oh, you know what, actually, I know you were talking about the hairs out there, but I didn't even notice them until you pointed out. And that made me feel a little bit better. And since then, a lot of my videos have been a lot more vulnerable. I don't try and do them in one take because I know I'm not that good at all, not yet anyway. But I don't try to strip out all the ums. I'm not trying to constantly be perfect every single time. It's more about just doing things. And like you say, we don't have to be interesting all the time because enough stuff happens all the time. And it could be absolutely anything. It's sharing those little bits that show that you're human is probably the most important part of it. And that's maybe better advice than just being authentic. Actually show that you're a human because of the things that happens to you is, I guess, another way of putting it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, right? And to come back to your point about AI, like AI can probably write every single thing that you could possibly want to write. It'll write it better. And what are you kind of left with after your ability to like not be able to outperform that AI? Then like you're left with kind of just your humanness. And I guess it comes back to there's things about what can you do that like stands the test of time as a sort of marketing approach. Like everybody wants to jump on AI right now. There's like every single company has probably got a focal point around AI as well, but that doesn't mean the marketing basics go out the window, right? That connection is always going to be something that has to happen in any marketing relationship.
Yeah, 100%. And that key word you just said was relationship. If there isn't a relationship, people don't trust you. If there's no trust, why on earth are they going to buy from you? Why should they give you their hard-earned money, I guess?
Yeah.
And that's really important, isn't it? So, okay. What you just talked about is everything you're already doing for some of your clients. So can you tell us a little bit about your business and I guess how you help your clients at the moment?
Yeah, I'd love to. So most of my daily communication goes through like a daily newsletter called the Invisible Expertise newsletter. And I do a core session with clients where we call it the extraction session. And the idea, coming back to that sort of quote, like, you don't need to sort of convey anything beyond simply providing information about who you are, what you're about, your skills, your experience, and so on as well. So it's a single session where I kind of extract all of that good information out of people. And again, just sort of treating that information as good enough to connect the dots. But by the end of the session, like I think the good stuff really only comes out in the last sort of 20% of the session. So it kind of starts off like a sort of bit repetitive, a bit samey, a bit in the comfort zone. But by the end, people are giving me all their hot takes and they're giving me their really like spicy opinions.
That's always good.
And they're happy in the room to kind of say to me, like, this is who I am, who I stand for in my business, or this is exactly what my business is about, and this is who we're trying to serve, and so on. And I guess my job at the end of the day is just, again, to pull out those golden threads that come up in the conversation, put them together into like the positioning and the messaging for the client. So I send them over a few recommendations and suggestions around the positioning and the messaging side of things as well. And then if they need the help implementing that in the business, from there it's about creating the marketing assets and again putting in maybe AI workflows for them to like be able to do that as fast as possible. But that's the kind of core thing that I kind of hang my hat on at being good at helping clients with.
Cool, that's good to hear. So extracting messages, making it suitable for their audience and sharing it as well in, I guess, where their audience actually is, because it's almost completely agrees with everything that I talk about in my business. I talk a lot about people, knowing your audience, talking to your audience, not just generally talking, because when you're talking to everybody, you're not really appealing to anybody. So yeah, it makes complete sense that getting the right stories out of people to be able to adapt them for the audience is a great way of communicating and targeting your audience as well. So thank you very much. That's been really helpful. Okay. One of the things that I guess you must come across, because I do as well, is when somebody goes, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to talk about. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, just coming back to my time at the wellbeing company, like people would literally come at me, come up to me with a kind of like sales page, and they'd be like, "Look, I've not not the foggiest what I'm going to sort of put on this or how to sort of say it," or even worse, they'd write something and they'd be like, they'd know it's off, right? You can tell you kind of don't have the skills to like correct it, but you know that it doesn't kind of sound right, or it doesn't kind of hit the right notes. So that's kind of like the blank page problem. And I think we've all been, we've all been through that. Like, I remember the first time I tried to write my own website for my coaching business, I actually put it off for 3 months. Like, I kind of just closed my laptop and didn't touch it for 3 months again. And there's moments where I wanted to, literally throw the laptop out the window. It was so frustrating. I guess kind of my analogy for this is like, it's like find the jigsaw pieces first and then put the puzzle together. So when I started sort of talking people through this process, it was simply a case of like asking the right questions to like unlock the bits of information that would go on there as well. Once you have the right information, you can assemble it however you want. There's loads of sort of, copywriting frameworks out there, whether you use, problem, agitate, solve, like, or before, after, bridge, or anything. It doesn't really matter. But the point is that if the right information's on the page in the first place, in terms of like covering off the audience, the thing about you that represents you the most, maybe adding a story in there and all those sort of facets as well, then you should never really have that problem of being able to sit down and not know what to write. So I think it's a bit of a misnomer that people say that they have like a blank page problem. Like, it's never really about that. And I guess it ties in with what we said about AI. Like, if you have the right context, the AI will do the right thing. The AI will never have a blank page problem because it will just churn out some rubbish anyway. But effectively, it's the same sort of thing going on.
Yeah, that makes sense. Self-awareness is one of those things that we kind of, as we get older, we tend to learn more about ourselves, and you start using your own strengths, your own weaknesses, and start using it for your advantage. I know personally, and I've got a huge piece coming up later on about self-awareness and what that means for me and my business. But I imagine for you and the journey that you've been on since your 20s, which not many of us are that self-aware at that stage, you obviously had to do it a lot earlier. How did being more self-aware help you in your journey?
Yeah, it was kind of forced on me. So effectively, I had some kind of like mind-body based pain going on. It was related to probably like sort of childhood trauma or something growing up. I am also like quite sort of an emotional, sensitive person as well, and I think probably more susceptible to the kind of pain that I experienced as well. But essentially, if I wasn't finding that kind of level of self-awareness, I felt like I was just stuck in this trap with this sort of like chronic pain. No one could tell me what it was, why I had it at all, even though I went for like sort of, went down the whole medical route. So I kind of felt like I was the only person in the world who had this sort of pain, which now I know not to be true, but it took me actually 18 years to actually find out what actually was going on with my body. Yeah. So in that time, I was like, right, nobody's going to sort this out for me. I need to do it myself. And that's kind of where I found that, I guess, like that agency to be like, I can take charge of my mind, and I'm in charge of this journey to an extent, or as much as I could wrest control from this sort of pain that basically it controlled my life. Like, yeah, there's no other way to sort of put that. The other thing about it there was like, if I kind of wasn't finding alignment with myself, then the pain would kind of tell me. So it was like my own internal like sort of BS detector. Mm-hmm. If I was sat there on that sales floor and I was sort of masking too much and selling myself out, then I would get worse pain because again, probably I was trying so hard to like hide what was really going on with me in my reality that it kind of like sort of externalized into this pain. So like having this sort of internal BS detector was a sort of blessing and a curse, I guess, because it's sort of taken me down this path where like I believe that I wouldn't have learned the ability to kind of maybe be so sort of multifaceted, doing coaching, marketing, and sales, and like learning that self-awareness piece and how important that kind of is as well. And I guess that kind of, it comes, everything comes full circle, doesn't it, in life? And that ability to kind of go inside is something obviously I use now with clients, but because I'm so comfortable being in that space that when they're kind of in the middle of like one of my extraction sessions, that I'd like to think that I kind of validate them and able to kind of like nurture, hold what they're saying, even if it's something that's really sacrosanct for them, then it kind of can be held very carefully so that they're able to get from the start of the session through to the end and feel like everything they say is valid and it will be respected as well. So again, that piece about, it being a sort of blessing and a curse, I guess, like, yeah, it's sort of funny where life takes you.
Yeah, it really is. And it's amazing that you've dealt with, I guess, so much from such a young age. It's clearly made a massive difference, and sounds like you're doing really well at the moment, and you're the perfect person to help those people that are struggling to find their stories, their inspiration, to actually pull that out, because you've been there, you've done it, and you've done it for yourself, and you're continuing to. So thank you very much for being a guest on Marketing Ninja Unleashed. I really appreciate you coming out, and sorry again for not telling you it was a video, but you've done absolutely amazing. So thank you so much for staying.
No, I've loved the conversation. Thanks, Rena.
Yeah, thank you.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.